if you're anything like me, you probably remember India just, well, a few decades back. Thinking about cars, your choices were pretty iconic, sure, but really limited. You had the Ambassador, maybe the Fiat. That was basically it, wasn't it?
Oh, definitely. It was a very protected market back then. The whole idea was self-reliance.
Yeah.
And now, you just step outside, the speed of change is staggering.
Yeah.
Every global brand you can think of.
Yeah.
Cars, phones, even specific processed juices, high-tech components.
It's everywhere.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The global marketplace didn't just show up. It sort of swallowed the old Indian market whole.
It feels like a complete, almost overnight transformation. Not centuries, but maybe, 25 years?
Roughly, yeah.
So that's our mission for this deep dive today. How did India make such a dramatic pivot from that protected, limited system to being so deeply connected with the rest of the world? What were the forces, really, that drove this incredibly fast integration?
Okay, to really get that, we need to look squarely at the main engine behind this change. We call it globalization. And specifically for our discussion, let's define it as this rapid integration, this interconnection between countries. It happens through foreign trade, yes, but crucially, through huge foreign investments. And these are mostly facilitated by what we call multinational corporations, or MNCs.
MNCs, they're not just big companies, are they? They seem to be the key drivers, the engine, like you said, restructuring how everything's made and sold globally.
They absolutely are. And if you want to understand the sheer speed of this shift, you have to grasp the immense kind of systemic power of these MNCs. You need to see how they orchestrate production across the globe, and importantly, the big policy changes India itself made starting around the early 90s.
Okay, let's unpack that then.
Right.
Let's start with the main player, the MNC. So it's a company that owns or controls production in more than one country. Simple enough. But why? Why go through the headache of operating across continents, different laws, currencies? What's the payoff?
It boils down to one thing, really. Maximizing profit by minimizing costs. It's relentless. MNCs are masters of strategically spreading out. They set up shop wherever they can find the cheapest labor, the cheapest resources, and, crucially, where government rules taxes, regulations are most, let's say, favorable.
But it's more complex than just finding one chip spot, isn't it?
Yep,
The
yeah.
fascinating part is how they break down the whole production process. You gave this example of an MNC making complex industrial equipment.
Exactly. So picture this. The design, the R&D, that happens in high-cost centers. Think the U.S., Western Europe, where the top engineers are.
Right, the brain work.
Then the actual making of the components, the mass production part that need lots of labor and scale. That might happen in, say, China, famous for cheap manufacturing.
Okay, makes sense. Components made in China. Then what?
Then those parts get shipped somewhere else for final assembly, maybe Mexico, maybe Eastern Europe.
Why there?
Because those places offer quick, cheap access to the big final markets, North America, the EU. It cuts down shipping time, import duties.
Clever logistics.
Very. And here's where India often comes in, adding massive value. You have this large, highly skilled, English-speaking workforce, right?
Yeah.
So they handle the specialized ongoing support stuff, skilled engineering backup, customer service call centers, back office admin.
The service side.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And when an MNC optimizes every single piece of this chain across the globe, design here, parts there, assembly somewhere else, support from India, the overall cost saving can be staggering. We're talking 50, even 60% reduction in total costs.
Wow, 60%. That's not just efficiency. It sounds more like a fundamental shift in economic power, doesn't it? If MNCs are doing this, isn't India sort of giving up some control just to be a link in that chain?
That's the core challenge, exactly.
Yeah.
When these giants enter a market like India, they bring foreign investment. Sometimes it's a joint venture. They give a local company cash for better machines, new tech.
Okay.
But often, the most direct and powerful way is just buying up successful local companies. Outright acquisition.
Lock, stock, and barrel, as they say. That really shows the massive difference in wealth, doesn't it? Like that Parag Foods example. It was a solid Indian company, right? 4 refineries, a good distribution network built over decades.
Yes, well established. And then one huge American MNC, Cargill Foods, comes along and buys it.
Just like that.
Just like that. Overnight, control flips. Cargill instantly becomes the biggest edible oil producer in India. Capacity. 5 million pouches a day. It's a very quick, often quite silent, transfer of economic power.
Yeah, the source material really hammers this point home that many top MNCs have more wealth than the entire budgets of some developing country governments. This isn't just about business, it's almost like a governance issue.
It absolutely is. MNCs can effectively operate almost like countries without borders. They pick and choose laws, tax systems, regulations that suit them best. Their sheer financial muscle lets them dictate terms, price, quality, delivery times, even to small suppliers, thousands of miles away, maybe making garments or shoes. They're setting the rules of the game, often way outside the influence of any single national government.
Okay, moving on slightly. How does all this MNC activity actually integrate markets? You mentioned foreign trade is key.
Right. Trade opens doors. Producers can sell to the whole world, not just domestically, and buyers. They get way more choice than local factories alone could offer.
The Chinese toy store you mentioned illustrates this perfectly, I think, how quickly things can change.
That's a classic case. Chinese manufacturers, using cheap plastic and labor, started exporting these new design toys to India. And crucially, they were much, much cheaper than Indian toys.
So for shoppers, it was great, more variety, lower prices.
Instantly, yes. But for the local Indian toy makers, devastating. Within just 1 year, something like 70 to 80% of toy shops in India were mostly filled with Chinese imports.
Wow, 1 year, that speed of, well, destruction for local industry is the harsh reality of this integration, isn't it?
It is. And none of this rapid change happens in a vacuum. You need huge enablers, technology and policy basically working together.
Okay, let's break that down. Technology first.
Yeah. Over the last 50 years or so, massive leaps in transportation tech. Standardized shipping containers, they slashed costs at ports.
Yeah.
Air freight got cheaper too.
Made moving physical goods easier and faster.
Much easier. But the real game changer, information technology, IT.
The internet, computers.
Exactly. Telecommunications, the internet, they just erased distance. Suddenly, you could manage operations in real time, make instant financial transactions across continents.
It's hard to even imagine global business before that now.
Think about it. A news magazine for London readers can be designed, edited, printed, and paid for instantly by teams sitting in Delhi, thousands of miles apart, but working together seamlessly. That level of immediate connection is what allows MNCs to run these complex, dispersed production systems.
Okay, so technology greased the wheels. What about the policy side? You mentioned a big shift in India, liberalization.
Yes, this was crucial. After independence, back in the 50s, 60s, India was very protectionist. High barriers to trade taxes on imports, quotas limiting how much could come in. The goal was to protect India's own young industries, let them grow without foreign competition.
Shielding the domestic market.
Right. But that model, built on self-reliance, was essentially flipped, starting around 1991. The government made a huge decision. They decided the era of protection was over. Indian companies needed to face the world, face global competition.
Why the change of heart?
The thinking, the philosophy shifted. The belief was that competition would force local industries to up their game, modernize, innovate, improve quality. Survival of the fittest, essentially.
So they started removing those barriers, taxes, quotas.
Largely, yes. They dismantled many restrictions. Foreign goods could come in more easily, foreign companies could set up shop, and Indian businesses also got more freedom to import what they needed and export their own products. That whole process of removing government restrictions, that's what we mean by liberalization.
And this lined up with global trends, right? The World Trade Organization.
Exactly. The WTO was set up basically to push for liberalization globally, to create a rules-based international trading system. But, and this is a big but, this is where the whole question of fairness really comes into sharp focus.
How so? What's the issue?
The problem is the power imbalance. The WTO rules pretty much force developing countries like India to tear down their trade barriers, open up their markets completely.
Okay.
Yet at the same time, major developed countries, the U.S. is the prime example, they keep huge advantages for their own industries.
Like what kind of advantages?
Farm subsidies are the big one. The U.S. government gives massive amounts of money to its farmers.
Okay, so they support their farmers. What's the trade impact?
Well, these huge subsidies mean U.S. farmers can sell their crops, wheat, cotton, corn, on the world market at prices far below what it actually costs to grow them. Economists call it abnormally low prices. They're essentially dumping surplus produce onto global markets.
Ah, I see. And Indian farmers who don't get those massive subsidies.
They simply can't compete. How can you compete against imported food that's being sold for less than it costs to produce, thanks to foreign government cash? It destabilizes markets in developing countries, ruins local farmers, which brings up that critical question.
Is this really free trade? Is it fair?
Based on the evidence the source material suggests, no, not really. If the biggest players don't follow the same rules, the playing field isn't level at all.
So, if the rulebook itself seems flawed, let's look at what happens on the ground. In India, segment 3, the uneven impact.
Right, because the effects weren't the same for everyone.
We know there were benefits. Consumers, especially urban, wealthier people, definitely gained. More choice, better quality goods, lower prices. Standards of living went up for many.
Absolutely. And some Indian companies thrived too.
Yeah.
The ones that were already strong, sophisticated.
Yeah.
They took on the challenge. They modernized, invested in technology, and some even became global players themselves. Think of Tata Motors, Infosys, Ranbaxy Indian MNCs.
And new jobs were created too, right? Particularly in those service sectors MNCs targeted. Call centers, IT support, electronics assembly.
Yes, a whole new service economy emerged, creating opportunities, especially for educated workers.
But there's always a but, isn't there? What was the cost? Who paid the price?
The cost fell heavily, proportionally, on small producers and on the working class. Globalization created huge, sometimes existential challenges for smaller businesses in sectors like toys, batteries, capacitors, vegetable oil.
Let's take that capacitor example.
Yeah.
Ravi, the producer in Hosur, Tamil Nadu. Tell us his story.
Right. Robbie had a decent little business. He made capacitors, employed about 20 people, even expanded in the 90s. He probably felt things were going well.
Stable, secure.
Even so.
Ah.
But then, in 2001, India removed import restrictions on capacitors. This was largely due to WTO agreements.
Okay, policy change kicks in. What happened to Ravi?
His main customers, local TV manufacturers, electronics companies, they could suddenly import capacitors, mainly from China, for less than half of what Ravi had to charge.
Less than half. He couldn't compete with that.
No way. His production basically collapsed almost overnight, fell to less than half of what it was.
What did that mean for his workers?
He had let most of them go, cut his staff from 20 down to just 7. And his wasn't an isolated case. He mentioned friends in Hyderabad, Chennai, running similar small units. Many of them just had to close down completely, shut their doors.
It shows the immediate, devastating local impact these big global policy shifts can have on small businesses, which employ so many people in India outside of farming.
Exactly. And the pressure doesn't just hit the owners like Ravi. It flows downwards, intensely, onto the workers themselves, because this fierce competition pushes employers to look for ways to cut costs, leading to what's often called flexible employment.
Flexible employment sounds okay, but what does it actually mean for workers?
It generally means less job security, fewer benefits. Let's look at Sushila's story, a 35-year-old garment worker in Delhi's export zone. Before globalization really hit hard, she had what was called a permanent worker job. That meant security, guaranteed benefits, health insurance, contributions to a provident fund like a retirement saving, proper overtime pay.
The kind of stability people need.
Yes. But then her factory closed down in the late 90s. Why? It likely couldn't compete with factories elsewhere that could produce clothes even cheaper, often because they paid workers less or had fewer regulations.
So she lost her permanent job. What happened next?
After a search, she eventually found another job, but it was temporary, and it was 30 kilometers away. And here's the key systemic shift. The old factory couldn't compete, and the new factory survives by pushing all the risk, financial risk, health risk, onto its workers. That's what flexible employment often means in practice.
So what were her conditions like in this new flexible job?
Just relentless pressure. She worked 7 days a week, often incredibly long hours, maybe 7:30 in the morning until 10 at night.
7 days a week.
7 days. Her wages, less than half what she earned at her permanent job. If she took a day off, she got no pay. And all those benefits she used to have, health insurance, provident fund, gone. None of that. Employers, under pressure from global buyers demanding lower prices, effectively find ways around labor laws to cut costs.
It sounds like the conditions in the organized sector, the factories, started to look more like the precariousness of the unorganized sector.
That's precisely the tragedy here. For workers like Sushila, the gains of globalization didn't trickle down. Instead, their working conditions deteriorated. They are paying the price for India's integration into the global supply chain, often without seeing a fair share of the benefits.
So let's try and sum this up. What does it all mean? The integration happened. That's undeniable. India transformed.
Completely. The visual change is stark.
But the evidence we've looked at makes it really clear. The impact was incredibly uneven. Dramatically so. People with education, skills, capital, they were generally well-placed to grab the new opportunities.
Yes, they benefited significantly. But vast numbers of small producers like Ravi and vulnerably workers like Sushila, they really struggle. They face closures, job losses, insecure work, stagnant or falling living standards. The challenge, the global challenge really, is how to achieve fair globalization. A system that doesn't just create wealth, but actively works to create opportunities for everyone and ensures the benefits are shared much more widely.
The government clearly has a big role here, doesn't it? Enforcing labor laws properly, maybe actively supporting small producers to help them adapt, negotiating harder for fairer rules at the WTO.
Absolutely. Government action is critical. But let's push it a bit further. Thinking about the root cause, we have this relentless pressure from MNCs for cheaper and cheaper goods, which leads directly to the exploitation of workers like Sushila and the destruction of local businesses like Ravi's. So beyond government policy, what other kinds of direct measures could you, the listener, imagine? Maybe things like mandatory ethical sourcing rules for MNCs, transparent wage guarantees right down the supply chain. What could actually hold these massive global corporations accountable for ensuring fairer practices everywhere they operate? That's something to maybe mull over.